Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here. Since sustainability is a major challenge for the 21st century, and it's not going to happen because we want it to happen or because we feel good about it. It requires creativity. Where's the creativity going to come from? Creativity is a distinctly human quality. We think of it as the quality that distinguishes us from the animals and certainly from the machines. But I want to argue that the way to sustain human creativity and to magnify human creativity and to keep vibrant communities of human creators going is to embrace more, not less, automation, and to embrace the idea that computers themselves can be creators that work with us as collaborators. Now, creativity is powerful but fragile. It rarely happens when we want it to happen. It's lightning that strikes at the whim of a fickle muse. And we want to coax the muse to do it when we need it. It's hard to be creative on a schedule. So, for a very long time, psychologists and creative practitioners have studied ways to systematize creativity. How to put creativity at our fingertips. How to put the muse on a leash. How to bring creativity when we need it. There are various methods for doing this. I guess the most popular and most widely known is brainstorming, where you put a bunch of people in a room and you get them bouncing ideas off each other. I guess TEDx and TED is a modern version of brainstorming. Brainstorming works because it allows people to suggest ideas in a non-judgmental context. People bring the ideas. It's the stone soup of creativity. But it's not as powerful as we want it to be because it doesn't actually deal with the process itself of creating ideas. To be truly creative and to systematize real creativity, we have to drill down into the structure of ideas and talk about how new ideas are formed, not how to treat them when they are formed. This is a very common practice. Go to any cinema showing a Hollywood movie and you will see the results of combinatorial creativity. You've all seen Avatar, right? It dances with wolves in space. Maybe it's better than Dances with Wolves, maybe it's not. Maybe it's Pocahontas in space. It's certainly a famous film in space. Lots of films work this way. You say, didn't I see this before? Isn't this a classic Western set in space, or at sea, or on top of a mountain? Now, Hollywood does this instinctively. They reuse the bits of past ideas that have worked and proven themselves to work in the past. And creative practitioners and scientists have studied how this process of reuse works. And they formalized it. So Fritz Zwicky, a Caltech astronomer, developed morphological analysis, which is a way to identify the morphemes of past ideas and to allow you to recombine them and to evaluate the combinations. Gennady Altshuler, a Russian inventor, studied thousands of patents to see what the key idea in each was and came up with a system he called TRIZ. He was Russian. In English it's called TIPS, Theory of Inventive Problem Solving. And again, both of these procedures allow you to be creative or help you to be creative by giving you lots of tables and charts and lookup. It's a bit like playing Dungeons and Dragons, actually, or using a spreadsheet. Big companies love it. Boeing uses it. They have these big TRIZ days, and they report good success with it. Okay, so this kind of thing works. But it's not just companies and engineers and accountants that use these techniques. The 20th century was the century in which art became the most abstract it ever was. But it was also the century in which art became the least mysterious it ever was. Because artists looked for ways to at least semi-automate the production of new ideas. Why? They were really interested in producing more and more and more art, but they were terrified of repeating themselves. And they were terrified of succumbing unconsciously to cliché. So they came up with a whole bunch of tricks and rules and random techniques to generate candidate new ideas. From Duchamp with his urinal, which is widely considered the most influential piece of art in the 20th century, and probably the most useful, to André Breton to René Magritte, to Dali, who used the same idea generation techniques as Thomas Edison, to Bill Burroughs, maybe the weirdest of them all, which is saying a lot, really. He developed the cut-up technique, which is where you cut up a text and you randomly recombine it, and you seek out the random recombinations that have surprising meanings. It's a very popular technique, and it was really brought to the fore by this guy, or at least my representation of this guy, David Bowie. David Bowie is famous for using the cut-up technique. It generates, or he uses it to generate possible ideas for the lyrics in his songs, which is why the lyrics in his songs are so weird, right? So Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. He gets these ideas because he's trying to avoid cliché. We're all slaves to cliché. That's what it means to be human. Cliché works. That's why it's so popular. But we want to avoid cliché when we're being creative. So you cut up these ideas, you recombine them, and you filter. You have to do a lot of filtering to take the ones that work. In fact, Bowie had some software written for him. He calls it the verbicizer, which sounds like an exercise machine. And it does this cutting up. But he's in control. He's the creator because he has to select and throw away 99% of the combinations that don't work. We heard earlier about IBM's Watson, okay? A good deal smarter than John Watson, Sherlock Holmes' friend. A good deal smarter than Sherlock Holmes as well. It beat the world champions at Jeopardy, which is not the greatest title to have because it's a game show. It's not exactly the Fields Medal or the Nobel Prize. But still, major significant breakthrough for IBM. It answers questions. Now, Picasso famously said, "Computers are useless. They can only give you answers." And you know what? He's right. He was right. He's dead. Sorry to break the news to some of you. Computers can look up. Google is great for giving you answers. It's not so good at telling you what to do next. If we want computers to be creative, we have to consider them as more than answer finders, but as question generators. And they have to pose interesting questions. Good art doesn't provide an answer. It asks a question. Same thing about good movies, good books. They make you think. So this field I'm talking about, which we call computational creativity, is both the logical descendant of AI, it's a branch of AI, but it's also the stepson of modern art. Because in computer science, we're always using ideas that were invented somewhere else first. Why? Because we're studying the processes of thought. And people have been thinking for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. It is incredibly hard to have a genuinely, truly original new idea in AI because someone's thought of it before, because we're a clever species. So computational creativity, you can think of it as the next step in things like the cut-up. Instead of having a piece of software like the verbicizer, which generates possibilities for someone like David Bowie to filter using his human mind, we get the computer to generate the possibilities and do the self-critiquing and the filtering and to say, this is a really good idea because. It's not just a tool, it's a creator. But we have to be careful. If we train our computers on convention and to recognize when something is not conventional, then it won't recognize true creativity, or it will treat true creativity as an error. We need to stop focusing on the surface, and we need to start focusing on the inner workings of human creativity. We need to study humans and see how humans are creative and to transfer that cognitive working into algorithms on a computer. This has a nice benefit because by understanding humans to make computers creative, we can understand how humans are creative in algorithmic terms, which can help humans be more creative as well. We want creativity on a computer to expand human horizons, to ask the questions that humans don't ask because we're enculturated not to ask them, or we're too polite not to ask them, or because we don't consider them as options, or because we can't see ourselves from the outside in. Computers can do all of these things. They're not human, so let's respect the fact that they're not human, treat them like anthropologists from another planet, allow them to look at what we're doing, give them knowledge about humans, but don't try to make them human. Their value comes in not being human, but being able to engage with humans. So a good computer, creative computer program, can look at human behavior and see the silliness in it, or see the interesting parallels between different facets of human behavior and report on them. They can make interesting analogies, metaphors, ironic observations, and look at us from the outside in. I find that a remarkable thing for a computer to do, and it only happens when we don't treat computers as mini-me's or as fake people, but as creative others, right? So basically what we want is we want our computers to complement us, not replace us. It's not about faking, it's about co-creation, right? Now, would the Beatles have been better if there were two John Lennons instead of Lennon and McCartney? Certainly wouldn't have been better if there were two Paul McCartneys, I'm pretty sure of that. Even one Ringo Starr is debatable, right? But creativity often arises from the conflict between people with different agendas and different goals. So we want our computers to be different from us so that we get this conflict of perspective that sparks new ideas. And at the same time, we should note that the myth of the lone genius has held back creativity studies for a long time, because we're still enthralled to the idea that creativity comes from some superhuman person in a garret. It comes from social interaction. No matter how lonely the creator, he or she has benefited from interacting with others. So we need to make our computers social beings. Not humans, but social beings that know how to interact with humans and benefit from the interaction. So we often get inspiration from the problems from others or the concerns of others, even if they have different goals. Chance conversations, crossed messages, crossed wires, ambiguities, misconstrued. All of these problems that computers have with dealing with humans are actually stimuli for creativity if we harvest them in the right way and use them in the right way. So even the fact that a computer without a great deal of knowledge is pretty dumb, we can use that dumbness to our advantage when it comes to making the computer help us be creative. Now, the city is a great metaphor for creativity. You push people of different backgrounds and agendas together. We can't get our computers to be creative if they're sitting on a laptop or a desktop in the office. We need to get them into the city. Of course, I'm not talking about putting them into robot bodies. I'm talking about virtual cities. I think Twitter is a great virtual city for our computers to live in. Here's an example of a wonderful bot. It's not my bot, but it's on Twitter called Pentameter. It creates poetry by taking the random tweets of other people and pairing them up if they meet formal constraints of poetry. So it tweeted this pair recently: "I'd rather be a river than a lake. This whole semester is a big mistake." Now, each of those tweets on their own is boring, but together it becomes quite interesting. There's an emergent poetry there, and it's using Bill Burroughs' cut-up technique in a very clever way. There's no knowledge. There's no Watson in here. Imagine what we could do if we added something as powerful as Watson to these simple techniques on Twitter, where social interaction gets magnified. And it's very democratizing for creativity, because Bill Burroughs was a trust fund kid. His dad supported him while he made his cut-ups, got him out of jail when he needed to be bailed out, helped him get published. We don't have that advantage, but on Twitter, it's a level playing field for all of us to be artists, producers, critics, and it's a level playing field for our machines as well. If your machine or you is doing something good, you'll attract followers and they'll favorite your outputs. It doesn't matter whether you're a machine or a person. In fact, a great deal of the intelligent content or the creative content on Twitter is produced by machines right now. And people knowingly follow those accounts because they know they're machines and they're sick of listening to humans. Here's my bot, Metaphor Magnet. I won't bore you with it. You can go look it up on Twitter if you like. It generates metaphors and analogies about the human condition. It pumps them out about one every hour. Sometimes it's offensive. It's mostly thought-provoking, I think, I hope. People seem to like it, and it uses a lot of world knowledge. Here's a version of it called Metaphor Mirror that instead of just randomly generating its metaphors in a null context, gets inspired by the breaking news stories on Twitter. So when it sees the BBC talking about UK's inflation rate remained at 0 last month, it starts generating this one here. How might a positive optimist become a negative pessimist? What if they were to run out of optimism, develop misgivings, and become negative pessimists? It reacts to the news with metaphors that encourage you to see the news from a different perspective. And believe me, more and more of the news that you're going to get on the web is going to be written by machines. And it may even be better than the stuff you're already getting. Let me finish by saying some of you, maybe many of you, will have heard the Cassandra-like dire predictions from famous scientists and industrialists lately, saying that AI is the genie that will destroy us all if we let it out of the bottle. You've heard Stephen Hawking. His software was getting upgraded. His software, which is the version of the stuff that predicts his next word, the stuff that you have on your mobile phone, was being upgraded. So the media asked him, do you think this will destroy us all, Stephen? And he said, yes, I think it will. Are you really worried about AI destroying the world? If you do, you're overestimating AI. And you're underestimating the human brain and its ability to adapt to changing circumstances. Right? When CERN built the Large Hadron Collider, some people worried that it would create a black hole that would suck the whole world into nothingness. And the physicists laughed at us. Now's our chance to laugh at the physicists, because they don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to AI. Having said that, and let me finish with this slide, our computers will not be the end of us. They'll be the making of us, because they will be co-creative partners that will extend what it means to be human and will embody what it means to be human even after we're gone. I'm not going to speculate why we'll be gone. Maybe apes will be our masters. Maybe we'll have gone to another planet. But you know what? There's so many robots already on Twitter producing really interesting outputs. I don't use Twitter myself. I just let my computer get on with it. It saves me a great deal of time. And I think a lot of people would like that. Just to view Twitter as some kind of Cirque du Soleil that you can watch occasionally, not have to actually get your hands dirty with. When we're all gone, these Twitter bots will still be working, representing what it means to be human. By then, I hope it's the best of us. Right now, it's not really the best of us. But our computers can be receptacles for the best of us, sustaining what it means to be human. In the meantime, magnifying what it means to be human, but always preserving what it means to be human. And I think that is the ultimate sustainability. Thank you very much.